The days after Taiho's presentation were different from anything before. The academy was buzzing with discussion. In every corridor, every classroom, every dining hall, aliens were talking about human DNA. They were reading the research papers Taiho had shared. They were asking questions. They were thinking, but something else was happening too. Something that Taiho had not expected. The aliens were afraid. He saw it in their eyes when they looked at him. He saw it in the way they stepped back when he walked past. Before, they had avoided humans because they thought humans were inferior, contaminated, weak. Now, they avoided humans for a different reason entirely. Taiho did not understand it at first. He had thought that explaining the truth about human DNA would make things better. He had thought the aliens would respect humanity once they understood what the viral sequences really meant. But respect was not what he saw in their faces. He saw something closer to terror. One morning, Sujin found him in the library. She sat down across from him and spoke in a quiet voice. "Have you noticed how they look at us now?" she asked. Taiho nodded. "I thought they would be impressed. But they seem scared." "They are scared," Sujin said. "And I think I understand why." She pulled up information on her data pad and showed it to him. "I have been reading about galactic history," she said. "About how the great civilizations developed. Do you know what they all have in common?" Taiho shook his head. "Stability," Sujin said. "Every advanced civilization in the galaxy reached its current level by creating stable, pure genetic lines. They removed randomness. They eliminated chaos. They made themselves predictable. That is how they built their empires. Through control. And humans are the opposite," Taiho said slowly. "Exactly. Humans are chaos. Our DNA is messy and unpredictable. We absorb new genetic material constantly. We change without meaning to. We evolve faster than any other civilized species in recorded history." Taiho thought about this. "So they are scared because they cannot predict what we will become. They are scared because they have never seen anything like us," Sujin said. "For millions of years, galactic civilization has been built on the idea that genetic purity leads to success. Humans prove that idea wrong. We are impure. We are contaminated. And yet, we survive. We adapt. We grow. We threaten everything they believe," Taiho said. "We threaten their entire way of understanding the universe." That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Taiho was called to Instructor Voreth for IFID office. The office was a small, quiet room filled with books and research equipment. Voreth sat behind a large desk made of dark wood. His gray face was tired. His black eyes seemed dimmer than before. "Please sit," he said. His voice was soft. Taiho sat in a chair across from the desk. He did not know what to expect. Was he in trouble? Had he offended the instructor? Was he going to be sent back to Earth? Voreth was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I have been teaching at this academy for 170 years, he said. "In all that time, I have never been wrong about genetics. Never. My research has been the foundation of genetic science across the galaxy." Taiho did not know how to respond. He stayed silent. "You and your colleague challenged everything I taught," Voreth continued. "You asked questions I had never considered. You presented evidence I had never examined properly. You made me look like a fool in front of my students." Taiho's heart sank. This was not going well. But then Voreth did something unexpected. He smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible on his gray face. But it was real, and for that, Voreth said, "I thank you." Taiho stared at him in confusion. "You thank me?" Voreth nodded slowly. "Science is about truth. It is about following evidence wherever it leads, even if that evidence destroys what we thought we knew. I was so certain about genetic purity that I stopped asking questions. You reminded me to ask again. He stood up and walked to a window that looked out at the stars. I have spent the last 3 days reviewing your research, Velrith said. Everything you presented is accurate. Human DNA contains active viral sequences that serve essential biological functions. This is not contamination. It is something else entirely. Something we have never seen before. What do you think it is? Taiho asked. Velrith was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I think it is the future. Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Velrith turned to face him. His dark eyes were intense. Every species in the galaxy reached a point where evolution stopped, he said. We became too successful, too stable. We stopped changing because we no longer needed to change. Our genetic codes became frozen, perfect copies passed down from generation to generation without variation. And humans? Humans never stopped, Velrith said. Your genetic code is still changing, still adapting, still absorbing new information. You are the only civilized species in the galaxy that is still evolving. He walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. Do you understand what that means? He asked. While the rest of us stay the same, humans will keep changing, keep growing, keep becoming something new. Is that why everyone is afraid of us? Taiho asked. Velrith nodded slowly. The Galactic Council has been monitoring Earth for decades. They knew about the viral DNA. They knew humans were different. But they assumed you would fail. They assumed your chaotic genetics would lead to weakness, not strength. They were wrong. What will they do now? Taiho asked. Velrith's face became serious. I do not know. Some members of the Council want to contain humanity, to limit your expansion into the galaxy. They see you as a threat to the established order. And what do you think? Velrith was quiet for a long time. The silence stretched out between them. Finally, he spoke. I think that the galaxy has been too quiet for too long, he said. I think that stability has made us weak. I think that every civilization needs chaos, needs challenge, needs change in order to grow. And I think that humans might be exactly what the galaxy needs. Taiho did not know what to say. He sat in the chair, staring at the old Karvani instructor. You and Sujin should be careful, Velrith said. Not everyone will welcome what you represent. There will be those who fear you, who hate you, who try to stop you. But remember this. You carry inside you the genetic code of every enemy that ever tried to destroy humanity. You are not just survivors. You are collectors. You take the best of your enemies and make it your own. He leaned forward across the desk. That is not a weakness, he said. That is the greatest strength I have ever seen. 1 week later, Taiho and Sujin stood at the entrance of the academy. Their time at the Galactic Academy was just beginning, but something fundamental had changed. The other students no longer avoided them. Some still looked at them with fear, but others looked at them with something new: curiosity, respect. Wonder. Sujin looked up at the stars through the transparent ceiling. 8% from viruses, she said. Quietly, 8% from everything that ever tried to kill us. Taiho replied. They smiled at each other. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Somewhere in the Great Hall, Instructor Velrith was beginning his next lecture. He was talking about genetic adaptation, about the value of change, about the strength that could come from chaos. He did not mention humans by name. He did not need to. Everyone already knew. Humanity was not a mistake. Humanity was not a failure. Humanity was a species that had spent millions of years absorbing its enemies and becoming stronger. And now, humanity was walking among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. The days after Sujin's question were strange. Something had shifted in the academy. The whispers about humans continued, but now they had a different tone. Before, the aliens had whispered about contamination and pollution. Now, they whispered about the question, about the challenge, about the young human woman who had stood up to Instructor Velorith and made him go silent. Taiho noticed other changes too. In the corridors, some students began to nod at him as they passed. In the library, a young Valoran approached him and asked if he needed help finding research materials. Small things, but they meant something. Velorith had not spoken to the humans since the lecture. He continued teaching as if nothing had happened. But Taiho noticed that the instructor's lessons had changed slightly. He no longer called human DNA contaminated. He simply called it unique. It was a small change, but it was a change. Still, the big question remained unanswered. What was the viral DN actually doing inside human bodies? Sujin had challenged Velorith to find out, but no one had presented any evidence yet. The mystery hung over the academy like a cloud. Taiho decided to find the answer himself. He spent every free moment in the academy's research database. He read hundreds of papers about human genetics. Most of them were written by alien scientists who studied humans from a distance. They were full of observations and measurements, but they lacked understanding. The aliens could see what human DNA looked like, but they did not understand how it worked. Then Taiho found something different. It was a small research project done by human scientists on Earth, just a few years before first contact. The project had studied the exact question that Sujin had asked. What were the viral sequences in human DNA actually doing? The results were remarkable. Taiho read the paper 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he read it again. Then he ran to find Sujin. She was in the garden, sitting on the same bench where they had talked before. The purple tree swayed gently in the artificial breeze. "I found something," Taiho said. He was breathing hard from running. "You need to see this." He showed her the research paper on his datapad. As Sujin read, her eyes grew wide. "This is..." She started, then stopped. "This is incredible." "I know," Taiho said. "We need to show this to everyone." 2 days later, another lecture was scheduled. This time, it was not Velorith who would be speaking. Taiho had requested time to present a research finding. It was unusual for a first-year student to make such a request, but the academy valued knowledge from all sources. His request was approved. The great hall was full again. Even more students had come this time. Word had spread about Sujin's question, and everyone wanted to see what the humans would do next. Velorith sat in the front row, his gray face unreadable. Taiho walked onto the stage. His legs felt weak. His hands were shaking. 3,000 aliens were staring at him, waiting to hear what he had to say. He took a deep breath and began. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice sounded small in the huge hall. He cleared his throat and spoke louder. "Last week, my colleague Sujin asked an important question. She asked what the viral sequences in human DNA actually do. Today, I want to answer that question." He touched his datapad, and the floating screens around the hall came to life. They showed images from the research paper he had found. For many years, scientists believed that the viral DNA in humans was just leftover trash. Genetic garbage from ancient infections. But research done on Earth before first contact proved that this was wrong. The viral sequences are not garbage. They are tools. He touched the datapad again. The screens changed to show a diagram of a human body. Let me give you some examples. There's a viral sequence called HFY. It comes from a virus that infected our ancestors about 25 million years ago. Today, this sequence produces a protein called syncytin. Does anyone know what syncytin does? The hall was silent. Syncytin is essential for human reproduction, Taiho said. It allows the placenta to form. Without this viral protein, humans could not have children. The virus that infected us millions of years ago gave us the ability to reproduce. Murmurs spread through the hall. The alien students looked at each other with confused expressions. Taiho continued. Here is another example. There are viral sequences in human DNA that control our immune system. When a human gets sick, these sequences help activate the body's defenses. They make proteins that fight infection. The viruses that once tried to kill us are now protecting us. He touched the datapad again. More images appeared on the screens. But here is the most interesting part. The viral sequences do not just help with reproduction and immunity. They also affect human brain development. Some of the genes that control how human brains grow and form connections are regulated by viral DNA. The viruses did not just make us stronger. They may have made us smarter. The hall erupted in noise. Students were talking over each other. Some were pointing at the screens. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief. Velrath stood up from his seat. The hall fell silent. These claims are extraordinary, he said. His voice was calm, but there was tension underneath it. Do you have evidence to support them? Taiho nodded. All of this research was done on Earth by human scientists. It has been verified by multiple independent studies. I have the full citations and data available for anyone who wants to review them. And you believe this changes the nature of what we have discussed? Velrath asked. You believe that because these viral sequences have some function, we should not consider them contamination? I believe we should consider what the evidence shows, Taiho said. He was surprised by how steady his voice sounded. The evidence shows that humans did not just survive viral infections. We captured the viruses. We took their genetic code and made it part of ourselves. And then we used it. We used it to reproduce. We used it to fight disease. We used it to build our brains. He paused and looked around the hall. Every eye was on him. The aliens in this room call their DNA pure, Taiho said. They are proud that they have removed or deactivated foreign genetic material. But humans did something different. We did not remove our enemies. We absorbed them. We made them work for us. He turned to look directly at Velrath. You asked what the viral DNA is doing inside human bodies. The answer is everything. It is helping us breathe. It is helping us think. It is helping us survive. 8% of our DNA comes from viruses because for millions of years, humans have been taking pieces of everything that tried to destroy us and using those pieces to become stronger. The hall was completely silent. Taiho could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Velrath stared at him for a long moment. The instructor's gray face showed no emotion, but his dark eyes were burning with something intense. Was it anger? Was it fear? Or was it something else? Finally, Velrath spoke. You are saying, he said slowly, that humans are not contaminated. You are saying that humans are modified, that you have been modifying yourselves for millions of years without even knowing it. Taiho nodded. That is exactly what I am saying. And the 8% viral DNA is not a weakness. It is a record of everything that ever attacked humanity. Yes, and you won every single time. You won, and you took pieces of your enemies as what? Rewards? Trophies? Taiho thought about this for a moment. Then he shook his head. Not trophies, he said. Weapons. Every virus that attacked us gave us something new. A new protein. A new ability. A new way to survive. We did not just defeat our enemies. We learned from them. We became them. The silence in the hall was deafening. Velrath sat down slowly in his seat. His gray hands were trembling slightly. For the first time since Taiho had arrived at the academy, the great Corvani instructor looked uncertain. In the audience, Sujin was smiling. It was a small smile, but it was real. Taiho had done what she had started. He had answered the question. He had shown the galaxy the truth about human DNA. They were not contaminated. They were not broken. They were not failures. They were survivors. They were adapters. They were the species that had turned every attack into an advantage. And now, the entire galaxy knew it. 1 week passed. The whispers did not stop, but Taiho learned to ignore them. He focused on his studies. He attended every lecture. He completed every assignment. He was determined to prove that humans belonged at the academy, even if everyone else thought otherwise. Sujin was the same. She worked harder than anyone Taiho had ever met. Every night, she stayed up late reading research papers about genetics and evolution. Every morning, she woke up early to review her notes. She never complained. She never showed frustration. She just kept working. The other students noticed. At first, they watched the humans with suspicion. Then, slowly, their suspicion turned into something else. Not respect, exactly, but a kind of grudging curiosity. The contaminated species was not behaving like contaminated species should. They were not failing. They were not giving up. They were competing. Instructor Velrith noticed too. Taiho could feel the Corvani's dark eyes on him during lectures. There was something in those eyes that Taiho could not understand. Was it confusion? Interest? Concern? Velrith had spent his entire life studying genetics. He had built his career on the idea that genetic purity led to success. The humans were challenging that idea simply by existing. Then came the day of the second major lecture on human genetics. The great hall was full again. Students from every species filled the seats. Floating screens displayed complex genetic information. Velrith stood at the front of the room, his long gray hands folded behind his back. Today, he said, we will examine human DNA in more detail. I have prepared a full analysis of the viral contamination present in human genetic code. Taiho felt his stomach tighten. Here we go again, he thought. The screens changed to show a breakdown of human DNA. Different sections were highlighted in different colors. The normal human genes were shown in blue. The viral sequences were shown in red. There was a lot of red. As you can see, Velrith said, the viral contamination is spread throughout the human genome. It is not concentrated in one area. It is everywhere. He pointed at different parts of the screen. Here, here, and here. The contamination touches almost every major genetic system. The alien students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some of them glanced at Taiho and Sujin with expressions of pity or disgust. What is perhaps most disturbing, Velrith continued, is that this contamination is not dormant. In most species, leftover viral DNA is inactive. It is genetic junk that serves no purpose. But in humans, these sequences are active. They are doing things. He paused for effect. The hall was very quiet. We do not fully understand what they are doing. Human genetics is too chaotic, too disorganized for us to analyze completely. But we know that the viral sequences are affecting human biology in ways that are unprecedented. Taiho heard a sound next to him. It was Sujin. She was breathing slowly and deeply, the way people do when they are trying to stay calm. Are you okay? He whispered. I am going to ask a question, she whispered back. Taiho felt a flash of worry. Sujin, maybe that is not a good idea. But she was already raising her hand. Velrith stopped speaking. His dark eyes turned toward the two humans sitting in the middle of the hall. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Yes? Velrith said. His voice was polite but cold. The human has a question? Sujin stood up. She was not a tall person, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire room. "Instructor Velrath," she said. Her voice was clear and steady. "You have told us that 8% of human DNA comes from viruses. You have called this contamination. You have said it is disturbing and unprecedented." Velrath nodded slowly. "That is correct. My question is simple," Sujin said. "Why?" There was a murmur of confusion in the hall. Velrath tilted his large gray head to one side. "Why?" He repeated. "I am not sure I understand the question." "You have told us that the viral sequences exist," Sujin said. "You have told us that they are active, but you have not told us what they actually do. What purpose do they serve? What function do they perform in human biology?" The hall was silent. Every eye was on Sujin. Velrath's expression did not change, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Was it surprise? Irritation? Or was it something else entirely? "The purpose," he said slowly, "is not relevant. The point is that the sequences are contamination. They are foreign material that has been incorporated into human DNA against the natural order of evolution." "With respect, Instructor," Sujin said, "I disagree. If the sequences are active, then they must be doing something. And if they are doing something, then we should understand what that something is before we call it contamination." Another murmur went through the hall. This time, it sounded different. Some of the alien students were looking at Sujin with new expressions. Not disgust, not pity, something more like interest. Velrath was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was harder than before. "You are a student," he said. "I am an instructor with 200 years of experience. I have studied genetics longer than your entire species has been civilized. Perhaps you should trust that I know what I am talking about." It was a dismissal, a way of ending the conversation without answering the question. Taiho expected Sujin to sit down. He expected her to accept the rebuke and stay quiet for the rest of the lecture. She did not. "I trust your experience, Instructor," Sujin said. "But I have also been reading your research. You wrote a paper 40 years ago about a species called the Velthari. Do you remember?" Velrath's eyes narrowed. "I have written many papers. In this paper, you discussed how the Velthari incorporated genetic material from a parasitic organism into their DNA. At first, other scientists called it contamination. But you proved that the incorporated sequences gave the Velthari enhanced immune systems. You called it adaptive integration, not contamination. You said it was a sign of evolutionary success." The hall was completely silent now. Taiho stared at Sujin in amazement. She had read Velrath's old research. She had found a contradiction in his own work. Velrath stood very still. His gray face showed no emotion, but his hands, folded behind his back, were tightening into fists. "The Velthari situation was different," he said. "How?" Sujin asked. "How was it different?" "The Velthari absorbed foreign genetic material and made it useful. Humans absorbed viral genetic material and made it useful. What is the difference? The Velthari had 2% foreign DNA. Humans have 8%. The scale is completely different. So, if we only had 2%, it would be adaptive integration? But because we have 8%, it is contamination?" Sujin shook her head. "That seems arbitrary, Instructor. It seems like the difference is not science. It seems like the difference is that you expected the Velthari to succeed, and you do not expect humans to succeed." Gasps echoed through the hall. No student had ever spoken to Velrath like this. No student had ever questioned his logic so directly. The other instructors who sat at the edges of the room were exchanging worried glances, but something was happening in the audience. The alien students were not looking at Sujin with disgust anymore. They were looking at her with respect. She had asked a question that none of them had thought to ask. She had pointed out a flaw in the logic that everyone had accepted without questioning. Valrath stood at the front of the room, silent. His dark eyes burned with something that might have been anger, or might have been something else entirely. Finally, he spoke. "What exactly are you suggesting?" he asked. His voice was very quiet now. Sujin looked at him calmly. "I am suggesting that before we call something contamination, we should understand what it does. Maybe the viral sequences in human DNA are not pollution. Maybe they are not mistakes. Maybe they are the reason humans are still alive. And what evidence do you have for this theory?" "I have the same evidence you have, Instructor. 8% of our DNA comes from things that tried to kill us. And yet, we are still here. We are still standing. We are still asking questions." She sat down. The hall was silent for a very long time. Taiho looked at his friend with new eyes. She had done something that he would never have had the courage to do. She had challenged the most respected geneticist in the galaxy. And she had made him think. Whether Valrath admitted it or not, something had changed. The question had been asked. And now, everyone in the room wanted to know the answer. What was the viral DNA actually doing inside human bodies? What had humanity become? The Great Hall of the Galactic Academy was very large. It could hold more than 3,000 students at once. The ceiling was made of clear glass, and through it, students could see the stars of the Andromeda system. The walls were white and smooth, covered with floating screens that showed information about different species from across the galaxy. Taiho sat in the middle row of the hall. He was 24 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. He had not slept well the night before. The beds on the station were too soft for him. He missed his small apartment back on Earth, in the city of Bazan. He missed the sound of the ocean and the smell of his mother's cooking. Next to him sat Sujin. She was 26, a little older than Taiho. Her hair was long and dark, tied back in a simple ponytail. She had a calm face, the kind that did not show emotion easily. But Taiho knew her well enough to see the small signs. The way her fingers tapped on her desk. The way her eyes moved quickly around the room. She was nervous too. They were the only humans in the entire hall. All around them sat aliens of many different kinds. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Some had scales and long tails. Some were very tall, almost 3 meters high. Some were small, no bigger than children. Some had no eyes at all. Some had too many eyes. The galaxy was full of life, and most of it looked nothing like humans. It had been only 15 years since Earth made first contact with alien life. 15 years since a ship from the Valaran Empire landed in the Pacific Ocean and changed everything. Humans learned that they were not alone. They learned that the galaxy was old and full of ancient civilizations. And they learned that Earth was very, very young. The Galactic Academy was a place where the best students from every species came to learn together. It was a great honor to be chosen. Only 2 humans had ever been selected. Taiho and Sujin were the first of their kind to sit in this hall, but honor did not always feel good. Since they arrived 3 weeks ago, the other students had kept their distance. Not with cruelty, not with hate, just with a kind of cold politeness that made Taiho feel very alone. The aliens looked at humans the way humans might look at a child who wandered into a university by mistake. With confusion, with pity, with the quiet question, "Why are you here?" The floating screens on the walls suddenly went dark. The talking in the hall stopped. Everyone turned to look at the front of the room. Instructor Velrath walked onto the stage. He was a Korvani, a species known for their intelligence and their pride. His body was thin and tall, covered in smooth gray skin. His head was large, with a high forehead that held a brain 3 times the size of a human brain. His eyes were black and deep, like pools of dark water. He wore long white robes that flowed behind him as he moved. Valrath was one of the most famous teachers in the galaxy. He had written more than 200 books about genetics and evolution. He had studied the DNA of over 5,000 species. Many students considered it a great honor. Just to be in the same room as him. Taeho did not feel honored. He felt small. "Good morning," Valrath said. His voice was soft but clear. It filled the entire hall without effort. "Today we begin our study of genetic purity. This is one of the most important topics you will learn during your time at this academy." The screens on the walls came back to life. They showed a spinning image of DNA, the famous double helix that Taeho remembered from his biology classes back on Earth. "Every species has a genetic code," Valrath continued. "This code is like a book. It contains all the instructions for building a living creature. The code tells the body how to grow, how to think, how to survive. A good genetic code is clean and pure. It has been refined over millions of years of evolution." Valrath waved his long gray hand. The screen changed to show the DNA of a Corvani. My own species, for example. Our genetic code is 99.7% pure. There is almost no corruption, no contamination. Every part of our DNA serves a clear purpose. This is why we are one of the most intelligent species in the galaxy. There was a murmur of agreement from the Corvani students in the room. They sat up a little straighter in their seats. The screen changed again. This time, it showed the DNA of the Valorans, the blue-skinned species that had first contacted Earth. The Valorans have a purity rating of 98.9%, Valrath said. Still very impressive. Their genetic code has been carefully maintained over 2 million years of civilization. More screens appeared. More species. The Thraki, with their 4 arms and warrior culture, had a purity rating of 97%. The Nelvari, a peaceful species of healers, had 96%. Even the Grothan, a rough species that many considered primitive, had a rating of 94%. Each time a new species appeared on the screen, Valrath said something positive about them. He praised their evolution. He admired their genetic structure. The students from each species smiled and nodded with pride. Sujin leaned close to Taeho. "Where do you think humans will fall?" She whispered. Taeho shook his head. "I do not know, but I have a bad feeling." The screen changed one more time. The image of human DNA appeared, floating large and bright in front of the entire hall. The double helix spun slowly. It looked the same as all the others to Taeho's untrained eye, but Valrath's reaction was very different. The instructor stopped walking. His black eyes grew wide. He tilted his head to one side, like a person who had just seen something very strange. "Ah," he said. "The humans." The way he said the word made Taeho's stomach feel cold. It was not cruel. It was not angry. It was the way someone might say the name of a disease. "I must admit," Valrath continued, "when I first studied human genetics, I was surprised." The hall was very quiet now. Taeho could feel thousands of eyes turning toward him and Sujin. He wanted to sink into his chair. He wanted to disappear. "Human genetic purity rating," Valrath said slowly, "is 92%. There was a gasp from somewhere in the hall. Then whispers. Then more gasps. The alien students were looking at the 2 humans with a mixture of shock and something that might have been discussed, but Valrath was not finished. "And of the remaining 8%, he said, his voice growing softer, "almost all of it comes from viruses." The hall erupted in noise. Students were talking over each other. Some were pointing at the screen. Some were pointing at Taeho and Sujin. A Kovanni student near the front actually stood up from his seat, as if he needed to get away. Velroth raised his hand for silence. It took a long time for the noise to stop. "Please," he said, "let us not overreact. The humans are a young species. They've only been civilized for a few thousand years. Perhaps with time and proper genetic treatment, their code can be cleaned." He said it like he was offering hope. But Taiho heard the truth underneath the words. The instructor thought humans were broken, damaged, polluted. Sujin's face had not changed. She still looked calm. But Taiho could see her hands under the desk. They were shaking. 8% viral contamination, Velroth repeated, shaking his large gray head. Truly remarkable. I have never seen anything like it in all my years of research. Taiho stared at the image of human DNA on the screen. 8% from viruses. He did not fully understand what that meant, but he could see from the faces all around him that it was very, very bad. Or at least, everyone thought it was. The whispers did not stop after the lecture ended. They followed Taiho and Sujin everywhere they went in the corridors of the academy. Students moved away when they walked past. In the dining hall, tables that had been full suddenly became empty when the two humans sat down. In the library, aliens picked up their books and moved to different sections. No one was rude. No one said anything directly. But the message was clear. The humans were contaminated. The humans were different. The humans did not belong. Taiho tried not to let it bother him. He told himself that it did not matter what aliens thought about human DNA. He told himself that he was here to learn, not to make friends. He told himself many things. But late at night, alone in his small room, he could not stop thinking about Instructor. Velroth's words. 8% from viruses. He had looked up the information on his datapad. He had learned things that his basic biology classes on Earth had never taught him. The viral DNA in humans had a name: endogenous retroviruses. They were pieces of ancient viruses that had infected human ancestors millions of years ago. Over time, these viral sequences had become part of human DNA. They were passed down from parent to child, generation after generation. But here was the strange part. Taiho learned that other species had this too. Almost every species in the galaxy had some viral DNA in their genetic code. It was a normal part of evolution. So why were the aliens so shocked about humans? He found the answer in a research paper written by Velroth himself many years ago. Most species had between 1 and 3% viral DNA. The Corvani, with their famous pure genetics, had only 0.3%. Even the Grothan, considered genetically rough, had just 6%. Humans had 8%. It was the highest number ever recorded for a civilized species. But what really shocked the galaxy was not just the amount. It was what the viral DNA was doing inside human bodies. In most species, viral DNA was dead. It sat in the genetic code like old furniture in a forgotten room. It did nothing. It meant nothing. It was just leftover trash from ancient infections. In humans, the viral DNA was active. Taiho read this fact 3 times before he understood it. The viral sequences in human DNA were not dead. They were working. They were doing things. Scientists from across the galaxy had studied this for years and still did not fully understand it. The aliens were not just disgusted. They were afraid. 3 days after the lecture, something happened that made everything worse. Taiho was walking through the medical wing of the academy. He had a small cut on his hand from a training exercise, and he wanted to get it treated. The medical wing was a bright, clean place filled with advanced technology that could heal almost any injury. As he walked past one of the treatment rooms, he heard voices inside. The door was partly open. He should have kept walking. He should have minded his own business. But he heard his own species mentioned, and he stopped. "The human sample is fascinating," a voice said. It was high and thin, like the sound of wind through narrow pipes. Taiho recognized it as the voice of a Nulvari, the healer species. "Fascinating is not the word I would use," another voice replied. This one was deep and rough. "A Grothan, maybe. Disgusting is more accurate." "Look at this," the Nulvari said. "When we introduce a foreign pathogen to human cells, watch what happens." There was silence for a moment. Then the Grothan made a sound of surprise. "The cells are changing," he said. "Yes," the Nulvari replied. "Human cells do not just fight infection. They adapt to it. They absorb genetic information from the attacking virus and incorporate it into their own structure." "That is impossible," the Grothan said. "And yet, we are watching it happen." Taiho pressed himself against the wall outside the door. His heart was beating fast. He knew he should not be listening, but he could not make himself walk away. "This explains the 8%, the Nulvari continued. "Humans do not just survive viral attacks. Their bodies learn from them. They take pieces of the enemy and make those pieces part of themselves. Like parasites," the Grothan said. His voice was full of disgust. "No," the Nulvari said slowly. "Worse than parasites. Parasites take and give nothing back. Humans take and transform. They become something new, something stronger. Is this why the Council is worried?" The Nulvari did not answer right away. When he spoke again, his voice was very quiet. "The Council has been watching Earth for 50 years, long before first contact. They have seen how fast humans adapt, how quickly they learn, how they survive things that should kill them. Diseases, wars, climate disasters. Every time, humans come back stronger than before. And you think this viral DNA is the reason?" "I think it is part of the reason. Humans are not like other species. They are not pure. They are not refined. They are messy and chaotic and full of genetic trash. But somehow, that mess makes them dangerous." Taiho heard footsteps inside the room. He quickly moved away from the door and walked down the corridor. His hands were shaking. His mind was racing. Dangerous. The aliens thought humans were dangerous. He found Sujin in the academy garden. It was a large indoor space filled with plants from 100 different worlds. She was sitting alone on a bench, staring at a tree with purple leaves. "I heard something," Taiho said. He sat down next to her and told her everything. Sujin listened without speaking. Her face remained calm, but Taiho could see the tension in her shoulders. "The Council has been watching us," she said when he finished. "For 50 years. Before first contact. Before we even knew aliens existed. They were afraid of us. Even then." Taiho nodded. "The Nulvari said we are dangerous. Because of the viral DNA, because we adapt too fast." Sujin was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "Good?" Taiho stared at her. "Good? They think we are monsters. They think we are dangerous," Sujin corrected. "There is a difference." She turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm and steady. Back on Earth, humans spent thousands of years being afraid of everything. Afraid of animals. Afraid of disease. Afraid of each other. We were small and weak compared to many things in our world. "I know," Taiho said. "But what does that have to do with we survived?" Sujin said. "Every time something tried to kill us, we survived. And not just survived. We learned. We adapted. We got stronger." She looked back at the purple tree. "Maybe that is what the viral DNA means. We did not just fight our enemies. We absorbed them. We made their strength our strength." Taiho thought about this. It was a different way of looking at things. Not contamination, not pollution, but adaptation, evolution, survival. The aliens see our DNA and think we are corrupted, Sujin continued. But maybe they are looking at it wrong. Maybe the viral sequences are not trash. Maybe they are trophies. Proof that we won. Won against what? Sujin smiled. It was a small smile, but it was the first real smile Taiho had seen from her since they arrived at the academy. Against everything that ever tried to destroy us. That night, Taiho lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about viruses. He thought about DNA. He thought about millions of years of evolution. Countless generations of humans fighting and surviving and passing their genetic code to the next generation. 8% from viruses. 8% of human DNA came from things that had tried to kill humanity's ancestors. And somehow, over millions of years, humans had not just survived those attacks. They had absorbed them. They had made the enemy part of themselves. It was strange. It was messy. It was unlike anything else in the galaxy. But maybe that was exactly the point. Tomorrow, there would be another lecture. Tomorrow, Instructor Velrith would probably say more things that made humans sound like genetic failures. Tomorrow, the alien students would probably continue to keep their distance. But Taiho was starting to see things differently now. The viral DNA was not a weakness. It was not a mistake. It was the reason humanity still existed. And if the Galactic Council was afraid of that, then maybe they were right to be afraid.